If you've got a question, the voices of resin are here. Oh, PlastChicks.
PlastChicks is an SPE sponsored podcast.
So I am Mercedes Landazuri.
And I am Lynzie Nebel.
And with our powers combined, we are
PlastChicks.
PlastChicks, the voices of resin.
That's us. So much resin in our voice. And so what we are doing today is we have a lovely new guest that Mercedes will introduce in a moment. You can listen to our podcast anywhere that you can find podcasts. You can listen to us on Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We have the video version. Is video an old, outdated word now? Probably. Video. I don't know. You can go on YouTube and check us out. The new episodes release the first Friday of every month. And also we're on social media.
If you can't find podcasts, you can just go to the number 4 and then spe.org/podcasts, and you will find our podcast on there.
You'll find us there too.
So today we'd like to introduce Elisabet Sjölund, brand owner management for Neste Renewable Polymers and Chemicals. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I already had afternoon coffee, so
very. So you're a step ahead of us already.
Hi.
And where I mean, we can see anybody who's watching the video. You have a very, very lovely skylight there. Where in the world are you joining us from?
I'm joining from Düsseldorf.
Düsseldorf.
Yes, that is where we have the hub office for renewable polymers and chemicals with Neste. And I relocated here last fall, a bit delayed. There was some pandemic coming in between me and Düsseldorf.
Weird.
And I was just moving back from Asia and had some time in Malmö. I'm originally from Sweden, so but now Düsseldorf.
Yeah, I saw on your LinkedIn you've and for anybody who wants to look you up, it's even though it's pronounced something like Sjölund, it's spelled with an Sjölund.
Yeah.
So I saw that you lived in China for a while. You speak some Mandarin? You've lived all.
I can speak a little bit Chinese, mainly food words, not so much chemical and petrochemical words, even though that was kind of my focus beyond food when I was in China.
I know Pong Yo. That's all I got.
Enough.
Yeah. So just getting right off of our agenda right from the start, but speaking of petrochemicals, also, looking at your LinkedIn, you actually studied undergraduate, you studied culture and communications and art history. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Interested in arts, always liked writing, drawing, sketching, painting, photography. So it was more like, why not? This is something I like to do and explore. And I think I had an idea of becoming a culture journalist or opening my own gallery at some point. Maybe I will do that at some point. But I also came to a point where I realized maybe this is more of a hobby. I want to explore something else. Coming back to some science basic studies, adding on some maths and finding chemistry just lovely. I got in love with chemistry and applied for chemical engineering, Master of Science in one of the technical universities of Sweden. And there we are.
Yeah,
for me, it's learnings, and I would say it's not that big difference. Using your curiosity, and there is chemistry.
I have to say, I totally relate to that. I did a similar 180. I remember saying back even when I was maybe in 5th grade that I would never use like math or science ever in my life or career. And here I am, working with chemistry and math every day.
I know I'm the odd one out with the engineering right from the get-go.
Yeah, you need to add some arts to that.
I don't know if that would work out so well.
But I think it's going to be a musician, actually. But enough about us. So can you talk about so back to your current job, right? Brand owner management for Neste Renewable Polymers and Chemicals. So can you describe renewable polymers and what that means?
Renewable polymers with Neste means polymers produced out of raw materials which are not virgin fossil. So using carbons that are from sources which are not super old and packed in the earth, because there are so many other options to produce materials, plastic materials and chemicals with the same qualities, the same benefits as the ones that are made from fossil ones. So yeah, it's about using other type of carbons. I think we have enough of them, either already drilled and used, or renewables, which means that the cycle is faster to create them again, and can be also captured from atmosphere. So there are plenty of options out there, and as we see it, we might reduce, we are able to reduce the dependency on using these fossil materials that we have already done, humanity, to a certain extent, and where we see some drawbacks.
So top level, for those, playing along at home, renewable, biopolymers, biorenewable, are those all the same things? Are there distinct differences?
This is of course a problem that we might come back to. There is confusion about wording, and there is also maybe a lack of clear harmonized wording to this. So when we talk renewables, we talk about using, as I said, carbons that are like biogenic, that are not fossil. Sometimes, bio-based is based on biogenic materials, but I think it's also when we then talk about the plastics or the chemicals made out of them, there are different types of materials which might. So in the case of Neste, first of all, we are not a plastics producer, and that is something which might be worth for me to mention already. I sometimes forget to mention that, and when it's not clear where in the supply chain we act. So we are not producing plastics ourselves, but we enable the production of materials, plastics, based on other sources by processing these materials in our manufacturing sites. We are working with downstream partners in the value chain who converts our hydrocarbons further into monomers and polymers. And of course, there are plastics which are also called bioplastics, and which are novel types with maybe a little bit different chemical structures, made from other type of molecules, while the ones that our raw material offers mainly are what we call drop-in. So actually having the same technical and chemical properties, and also enabling them to kind of directly replace the kind of fossil conventional based ones. So yes, I might add confusion, and I think the industry, we have a homework to make when it comes to trying to explain this. I think in general, the understanding of what is really plastics is confused, and I don't know if we have deliberately not wanted to kind of show what it really is, but I think we're on our way trying to explain better, but there is still a lot of gaps in terms of communication.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking that as you were speaking, explaining, the confusion or educating the public about renewables when most people really don't understand what plastic is. Right. Yeah, a long way to go. But
Yeah.
Right, because we're I keep saying we're at the dawn of the plastics age, right? A lot of development on the forefront.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much, entry level into like just knowing what plastics is, and then you take it that step further, and it's talking about the renewables and the bio, feed and the biorenewables and all that. It all convolutes the actual message of what most people are trying. Like I feel like end game, we're all kind of looking at the same, goal, but like there's just so much confusion up front. It confuses a lot of the consumers, the people not involved in it on the day to day, and some people involved in it day to day, you know,
exactly.
without.
I think sometimes that is a problem which might also cause delay in the transformation in the sense of, if you're a maximizer, you want to find the best, the perfect choice, all these different messages and choices and options makes it quite difficult to kind of know what is really best for me, for us.
Right.
Or can someone just give me one solution, and there we are. And I think that's also it, that there is not one perfect solution, and now we really need to act anyways. But
well, and that's difficult too, right? Because you know, I think in some of our communication prior to this, you'd mentioned that defining, you know, sustainability, how different organizations define sustainability, and figuring out how to having that communication from your customer, from the you know, throughout the value chain, defining that before you can really even start the conversation of, you know, which technologies are going to be the best for you. So what do you find is the most difficult part of presenting this type of information to the customer? Where do you struggle to easily show the benefit versus the effort?
I think one part that I don't know if it's really, I mean, difficult, but it's an interesting challenge to understand what the organization actually, what is the perspective they have on sustainability. What is it they want to aim? Because I think everyone, there need to be some, as mentioned, there are many options out there, maybe not one perfect solution. It also have, but the question is, what is prioritized in each case? And nowadays, in many cases, it's the carbon dioxide emission is like number one, reducing that. In some cases, it is how can we help reducing waste, reducing littering? How can we take care of our own waste? And I think Neste has parts of solutions or full solutions to all of these topics. But the question is also like coming back to the user and see what is it, what can we help you with? What is it really you want to have help with here? And then of course the message, how do we explain this in a way that it makes sense? Because with all this information overload, all these different solutions, how do we create trust that this is actually helping? Because as it is a drop-in solution, it looks the same, it smells the same, it feels the same. How do I know I'm making any difference? What is it really I get?
Right. And best case scenario is, as you're saying, you know, drop-in solution, there is no difference. Nobody should be able to know you did anything.
Exactly. And that's a good part, but that's also the difficult part. And also actually that now it has been a while when brand owners, organization working with consumer goods have been looking for more sustainable options, and they have an organization who has done their homework in sustainability teams looking for scouting new materials. And sometimes I feel there might be a gap in the kind of, are they set up to deal with a drop-in solution? Because normally a new material is handled via a process of compliance tests and so on. And it is, in this case, that is not really what is needed. We are offering something which would enable a direct substitution, but still we might get stuck because the processes of implementing a new material is based on the idea that the material is new in a different way. So that is something I think will develop. I can get more synced, but
and so from a regulatory and compliance standpoint, with these drop-ins, are they drop-ins from regulatory standpoints as well?
They are drop-ins from regulatory, because the plastics that are produced, that can be produced, are like our direct customers, the partners of ours who produce the plastics. They can offer the same grades. Gotcha. And if so, they are like in compliance. Then of course, depending on what they want to do with our molecules. But yeah.
So, you know, you guys had to deal with McDonald's on the clear cups. Kind of going back to that, like, what's the priority? Where did the priority on putting those clear cups? What was that game plan for that? Because that's, I mean, McDonald's is a big deal. McDonald's is, you know, if you're going to look at the average Joe's going to say, oh, here's where my littering comes from. It's probably something like fast food drink cups or, you know, something along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. So McDonald's is one example of a brand owner who is, as you say, they are big, and they are, of course, like focused on how can they work with different sustainability issues, and trying out their solution as one example. I think they have launched some announcements regarding it, and in this case, using renewables, of which one source was even cooking oil from their own restaurants as an example, and which they are now, as I understand, testing out in selected restaurants in the US. So yeah, it's one case which I think is quite good because it is known brand and so on.
And what, let's talk a little bit about, now you, in part of your role, do you work with chemical recycling as well?
We have a team which works more focused on the chemical recycling, but of course this is one of the topics we touch upon with the brand owners and kind of future prospects, how to develop that part and close the circle. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Going back to renewables here, how is Neste prioritizing renewables, and how has that business, that segment grown for you guys over the years?
Because it's been a part of your portfolio for quite a while, if I was stalking you correctly earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Renewables has been an important part of Neste for quite some time. When it comes to renewable polymers and chemicals and using our materials and our processes also for the materials and chemicals industries, when I joined Neste, we were still called the Emerging Businesses Unit, but quite rapidly then transformed into renewable polymers and chemicals as a business unit of its own, and already then being connected to brand owners and value chain partners, developing this, resulting in the first commercial production of polyolefins, polyethylene, polypropylene, with value chain partners in 2019, and since then speeding up and pacing up and so on. So I think already, of course, before that there was work done, and Neste has worked with renewables quite a few years before that. But so the business unit is in one way relatively new, but it still feels like a lot of things has happened since. Also, of course, with the industry as a whole, the maturity to make the change and move.
Yeah, I think that shows a lot of the adaptability, because obviously, and it's nice that Neste has recognized that from an early stage, but has also recognized the need not to just be like, hey, we're recycling, put your polypropylene in this bin and your polystyrene over here and we're good. The fact that they have recognized there are, new emerging types of technology, closed loop chemical recycling, moving to the renewable polymers, all that kind of stuff, and then adapting a business unit for that. That's the responsiveness you want to see in a corporation.
Yeah, and I think it's also coming back to Neste's backbone, which is a lot about working with challenging materials and upcycling them. So whether it comes to the renewable side, where we are focusing on wastes and residues, and also in innovation and R&D, continuously looking at the portfolio of which materials can we both find accessible, acceptable sustainability-wise, and that we can use. And it's a lot of focus on these challenging ones. So when it comes to the chemical recycling, it's of course about not, it's to complement what can be done with mechanical recycling, to look at the reject streams and see how can these, rather than go to landfill or so, how can we use them in our processes and upgrade them to be used and even upcycled to sensitive applications where you could not at all work with these materials before. So it's a strong focus on kind of finding those and continuously develop those ways to use the challenging materials and use our processes to enable the better use of resources where we can.
Are you able to talk about some of the challenging materials that you work with? I know in our communications, I saw one that's like a real kind of trend forecasters talking about algae a lot now. That's one that you work with, right?
That is one, yeah, that is one area which is really identified as an important future platform to look into. I wouldn't be the right person to share details on exactly what we are doing there, but same as with lignocellulosic waste, municipal solid waste, and other of those future materials. But yeah, algae is among those. However, I would not be the expert to share the details.
I know we can't get into details for
For a lot of things.
a lot of proprietary information there probably, but what are some of the new raw materials that are most exciting to you?
I actually would say that algae for me that is interesting, and I find anything that is like, okay, can we use something that is definitely today not even hardly seen as a waste? And I'm like also, but what? Because this is of course like a continuous development. What was not waste yesterday, or what was waste yesterday, is then suddenly for someone the core product of something. So how this classification and definitions continue is of course important. I do find used cooking oil interesting because it's clearly and it's also in many cases quite acceptable. Well, some things are more raises questions and so on. I think some of the materials are easier to kind of grasp as, yes, this is something I can clearly see as a waste, and being able to use it for better purposes. But yeah, I find, and of course having a background also from forest industries, I think if there are ways to cleverly use and make sure to valorize all the different streams together with different industries, and to break some silos is always good.
Yeah, so you served as the vice chairwoman for the Council for Paper and Related Industries Marketing Association. Kind of going back to that, like, how do you think, serving in a non-plastics industry kind of influences your decisions or lends itself to being in an industry that's, needs to be more focused on the sustainability aspect of things?
Yeah, I think maybe two sides to that. So I started my career very much related to forest-based industries, and quite soon started to work with fiber-based packaging, and that was also a little bit my role or my entry point to this PRIMA, the association that you mentioned, because the industry when I joined was the forest and fiber-based industry was more or less in a sort of a crisis and in need of for transformation, as the expected and anticipated growth of, for example, news reading on newsprint magazine, that kind of didn't happen because the digitization made the kind of tablets and mobile phones serve that purpose. So suddenly, what to do with our fiber-based industries? And this kind of urge for a transformation led to the kind of focus for the forest industry into bioeconomy and how to use the fiber-based materials in other applications such as packaging, but also for construction and for a lot of things. So it gave some sort of experience from that, being in an industry in need for that transformation. But also I think the connection and interface I had with brand owners already then in terms of packaging makes me realize that for a brand owner, it's not so much a question of like the focus is not so much plastics, paper. It's like we need materials to carry our brand. What is the best option we have? What is the more sustainable one? How can we combine that? So it's kind of the construction of different silo industries doesn't really work. And more I feel also now going to conferences and events, if I compare, it's not so much about killing the other industries' suggestions, but more about, okay, all these solutions are needed. And also plastics means much more than only petro these days, because plastics can, as we have seen, be made from so many different parts. So it gathers the industry from different perspectives, but it's also like seeing the end user perspective. It's not so much either this material or this, but combination. So I think, yeah.
Do you think there is enough collaboration between industries like that, or is that more, I mean, obviously that's the ideal scenario, but do you think people are?
No, we are not there. We're not there yet. I mean, there is collaboration. I'm very happy to see that the discussion has moved to a much more open to kind of, let's do this together and so on. But there is always room for more collaboration and trust. And as I said, focus on what is actually the need. What is we are citizens. We need something, and how will that kind of develop, and how can we meet those needs together? But I think I see a lot of that happening already, but it's of course always room for more.
My perception, Elisabet, correct me, or give input on this, but my perception is that Europe is a little bit ahead of the United States in that regard. That I think in the US, as far as the value chain, there are a lot of barriers put up between each stage, and that creates a lot of miscommunication and really understanding, okay, what does the brand owner actually need with this, right? Or what does the consumer actually want with this? Do you feel that? Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe. I've mainly worked, I think, with Europe, but although what I see is, for example, when we discuss recycling, the problem is because nowadays many brands are truly global, and we work with global brand owners, so we don't really differentiate whether the market would be this and that. We try, and most of the brand owners also have these kind of the rule that the strictest rule should apply to all markets. Then what I see, for example, when recycling policies are completely different, not only between countries, which they might still be in EU or in Europe, but also between states in the US and so on. That complicates things, of course, and it makes I think it creates a hesitance to what do we invest in, what type of polymer resins can we use together, how are they classified, is there a and possibly that Europe has developed some sort of those harmonized things further. But yeah, I see maybe there are some different focus areas as well, and also the way of calling things and what is really important and not. But I think, yeah.
What can we do both inside the industry and outside of the industry to make renewables more accessible or more successful in the market? Should we be fighting for them? Should we be advocating for them? And how do we even go about
solve our renewable polymer problem right now?
Well, of course, communication, creating awareness. I mean, I still feel that because we have the option now to drop in, replace polyolefins and other like engineered plastics, and you don't need to change the infrastructure and so on. And I think being able to reach material product designers, because I still think it's not sufficiently well known that it is possible. Of course, we need to continuously work on finding making sure we have access to the right raw materials, and these future raw materials, and secure that they are sustainable, and be able to prove that it's possible. We can do it today. We can show that it does decrease your climate impact or whatever you want to do. But I think we can talk about it and showcase.
And recording podcasts and pushing them out to the world.
Stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a good point you make about like reaching out to the designers and stuff like that, because I know within my company there's a, you know, obviously with most companies there's a big sustainability push, and they've specifically targeted the new products as their starting point before they even like go to company-wide culture or, you know, existing products or anything like that. You know, it started at the design, because if you get it in at the design,
Right.
it makes the rest of the process so much easier. And yeah, I think that's a group of people that somehow do get overlooked in some of these types of conversations, you know.
I have the feeling that and also I know already that, like, I have friends who are teachers in even like undergraduate in design, and they have on the agenda they need to somehow teach sustainability.
Yeah.
But there is not really a lot of support for them, what to put into that, how would they know what is available, what is the kind of toolbox, and showing that there are different options. I mean, it's yeah.
Right. Yeah. No.
We have a homework to do with the communication, and it's easy to kind of get stuck in our own bubbles and create this language which is not very inclusive. So yeah, I think we can work on that again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm realizing too, not just the industries or companies or parts of the value chain are siloed, but even within companies, there's silos within companies, and people not really speaking the same language when they're trying to communicate about.
Yeah, and then again, it is still, we are creating a new dance floor, and
love it.
So it is, of course, confusing, like who is kind of who is running the show, who create the name. Can we agree on this is what we call this and that? So I think it's
and it's moving so rapidly. Like like you're saying, like, how do you create the toolbox when like new tools are literally still being made and like still being, you know, you can see the existing ones, but it's going so quickly. It's hard to account for that when, especially when you're training people in this, you know, development area.
Yeah, but it's a very interesting and important question that are there groups that we are overlooking that could enable more like, rapid deployment or implementation? Yeah.
So I think we're right about at time. I have one more question for you, Elisabet. So you were an analyst in the beginning of your career, and then you moved into business development and now brand owner management. So what is the constant thread throughout those? And what kind of has guided you in this career path? And do you recommend it to others?
Yeah, I do recommend follow your heart and explore. You know, I think I've always been a little bit on a pendulum between mid to long-term strategies or more commercial interface. Now I feel more and more that the one shouldn't exclude the other, because we need to, as you said, everything moves so rapidly. So developing the market, the business for times to come requires that we are really with eyes and ears close to the end markets, the needs, the end users. I think that was a little bit what drew me from being more or less a consultant, or that created some sort of vision 5 to 10 years from now, and being like a PowerPoint engineer, suggesting future scenarios. I wanted to try them out. I wanted to kind of see, does this really work? I wanted to see reality. And it was scary when I started to work as a product manager. I had to accept direct feedback from customers and from sales representatives, and I needed to accept that my suggestions are not always working. But it's also quite rewarding to have that feedback and to see what works, and to recognize that sometimes it's not at all as you envision, that the bottlenecks are completely different. Then I also see increasingly now that we are all consumers. So it's not that, like, it isn't that scary to get out there and try to figure out what it is. And also, when we close the circle, the end user is not only the end user, it's also the origin of the material at some point. So I recommend trying both sides, and I recommend combining them. One thing doesn't need to totally. So if you are an analyst, try to get out and also talk to the kind of end users. And for me, getting more into, let's say, a commercial and sales role, which I felt was a bit scary. I'm not a saleswoman. I was like, I had to go there with the kind of point and perspective that I'm exploring this. I'm asking questions and trying to understand the needs.
Mhm.
This is what is driving me, rather than pushing something.
Right.
And that is also part of this need to be more resource efficient. We cannot afford pushing resources that are not needed. We need to first understand what gaps do we need to close? What is it we should put out there? How should we use the resources we have? And that is only by being at the market interface, or I would say.
I love it. I love it. Asking the right questions. Well, Elisabet Sjölund,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. This was delightful. I always speak for me and Lynzie.
Legally. Yep.
We both have full authority to speak on each other's behalf, but we're very excited to be dancing on this new dance floor of renewables with you.
Yeah, I love that. That's my mission in life, starting dance floors. So thanks very much for having you on your dance floor.
All right.
And where can we find Neste next? Like at a conference? Any papers that you guys are presenting soon?
Always something coming up. I would recommend going to our website to check out, because
Wonderful. And that's just neste.com.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.